I have with me today Ryan Grimm. He's the DC bureau chief of the Intercept. Some of you guys have probably seen his reporting in the past. He's awesome. He works with TYT as well, and a bunch of other people that work under him has worked with TYT in the past as well. I really like his stuff. Can I talk about what happened at the White House Correspondents Dinner one time?
That sounds fun.
Just to get you started. Okay, so
were you there for this?
well, no, this was years ago.
Okay.
I was a fetus back then.
You were a little tight.
Okay, I was a little baby back then. I was barely.
This was far back as 2016.
Okay, wait. So who was it that you had a minor scuffle with?
Jesse Waters.
Yes, Ryan is not only a brilliant reporter, and but also he had a scuffle with Jesse Waters. Where did you punch him?
Dude stole my phone. Yeah.
Jesse Waters stole his phone, and then Ryan actually punched. Just you tell the story.
Well, yeah, I did.
You were there.
You know, for those that are lucky enough not to know who Jesse Waters is, he started out as a Riley producer whose job was to go like ambush kids or professors and try to make them look silly. And so I saw him at this White House Correspondents after party. And I was like, oh, okay. And I took my phone out and started interviewing him and about some shit that had gone down several years ago between him and a colleague of mine. And he's like, look, let's schedule a time to do this interview later. Like, what, schedule a time? You're the ambush guy. Take the ambush. Let's do it right now. And so he snatched the phone out of my hand and tossed it. So I went and picked it up, and it was still filming. And I took it back, and I'm like, you didn't answer my question. I think the question at that point was, do you have any shame? And so this time he snatches the phone out of my hand and puts it in his pocket. And he's like, you'll get it back next week.
How big is he?
He's about 6'3".
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Hell yeah.
He's actually a surprisingly big dude.
Yeah, I got that from him. Like I got that energy from him. I don't know why, but I mean he's a giant dummy. But that's cool. So
6'3".
He stole your phone and then you had to get it back. He violated the non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah, you don't touch somebody.
Yeah.
And also, get it back next week. How am I gonna get home? How am I gonna get an Uber? Like I need the phone. Like I'm not leaving here with this dude. I would have to quit my job and leave the media if I walked out of there letting the dude just walk home with my phone.
So what happened after?
So I told him, I'm like, look, you gotta give me the phone back. We go back and forth on this, and the phone was still recording audio of this, so you can actually find it on YouTube somewhere.
Oh my god!
I'm like, you gotta just give me the phone back. Like this is ridiculous. And so he's like, get back off. I'm like, give me the phone. And then I'm like, look, I'm going to take the phone back. So I prepared him. Like, I'm going to take it. And
it's on HuffPo Politics. We can take a look at it.
There it is.
Uncut interaction between... Wait, let's see. This is Jesse Waters. Oh, they made like a 6-minute video on this. Hold on.
Inside the fire station is to trap her in a room and talk to her. That's not going to happen.
That's Jesse Waters.
I remember her.
Is this your
So
phone?
this is my footage.
This is your footage?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to call her out.
So this is him. This is him before he realizes, I think, that I'm filming. He's like very pleased with himself.
No, there she is. If she come over here, would you apologize?
There's Ari Rabenhoff, who is now a senior advisor to the Sanders campaign. There's Jen Bendery, a Huffington Post reporter. Let's see what else we can find in this crowd.
Hold on. Let me turn our... I just changed cameras, so it's like a little bit harder. Oh, there it is. Okay, we turned it back on. All right, let's keep going.
I ambushed her because O'Reilly told me to get her because she said some really bad shit.
So that was an admission on his part that he didn't. I think that right there is why he took my phone and was going to try to give it back next week. He said, I ambushed her because O'Reilly told me to get her. And she probably would. This is about Amanda Turkle, who they confronted on vacation like 3 hours outside of Washington, D.C. And she would have gone on his show, I'm sure, if if Bill O'Reilly had asked her to, but instead they wanted to like stalk her and humiliate her. And so here he's admitting O'Reilly told me to get her because she was a blogger who'd written a piece, like a very short post that had called out some kind of sexual assault survivor organization that was allowing O'Reilly to speak at its fundraiser, and pointing out that he had been
Is this pre or post
rape
release?
apologist.
Is this just because he was a rape apologist, we did not know that he had, because at this point I'm pretty sure we didn't even know the extensive rap sheet of Bill O'Reilly.
This was 2009.
Oh yeah.
But he had said on the air some gross things about like women asking for it and stuff like that. And so she was like, you really want to have a dude who talks about women asking for it as your keynote at this fundraiser. And so O'Reilly told his goon, go get her. So, which he just admitted to, I think, without knowing it.
I know your video.
Of course I am.
Oh, he's hammered.
Now he does, yeah.
Rape victim, so I had to call her out.
She denigrated rape victims. God damn it! Look, this is what I fucking can't stand.
Look at that mug. Look at that mug.
Oh, just so punchable. I mean, in a video game. That's how we don't violate the terms of service, just for the record.
Right.
But it's just like right wingers are so good at messaging. They're so good at projection. They're so good at messaging. Like it's actually Amanda Turkle who denigrated rape victims, not Bill O'Reilly, who routinely talks about how these people were asking for it, these victims were asking for it, or even beyond that, him personally victimizing
countless women.
To the tune of to the tune of like millions of dollars to cover up that entire process. It's so good, so good.
That's chivalrous of you.
Oh yeah, that's why I said that's chivalrous of you.
In his chivalry, he went out to the middle of Virginia and cornered her.
Are you videotaping?
Oh yeah, of course I'm videotaping this.
Get out of here.
Okay, before we go further with this, I want to say something. In my experience, and I have very limited experience when it comes to the White House Correspondents Dinner. I went 2 years ago. It was one of the worst experiences of my entire life. I said when I was there that pound for pound, this is probably the most evil place on the planet. Not probably, like 100%. DC is literally the most evil place on the planet, and you can like fucking feel it in the air when you're there. And the White House Correspondents' Dinner parties were
the distillation of it,
just the fucking worst. Like everyone that goes, that's when I truly experienced the theatrics. I was like, this is all bullshit. Like these people that are yelling at one another on TV are 100% doing this for the entertainment value, and they don't realize the consequences of it. They don't realize that they're riling up and brainwashing massive chunks of the population and almost the entirety of like American voters that actually do go out and vote, while rubbing shoulders with one another and talking about how fucking famous Anthony Scaramucci is or was at the time, and getting excited to see like Kellyanne Conway or whatever, and it was just fucking awful, and that's why I'm pretty sure right in this instance where like Jesse Waters turns to you and goes, come on, buddy.
Right.
Like he's like, come on, play along.
Right.
Like, what are you doing? Like this is.
It's all we're all in on the same joke.
Yeah.
And while I'm not proud that as a grown man I was throwing punches, outside of middle school and high school, not necessarily proud of that. I am proud that I don't do that thing where like we all take off the masks and we're all on the same team, and that I actually do care about what I do. Like,
do you feel
I
like
take
your
this stuff
access
seriously.
has been? Do you feel like your access has been diminished because of that though?
No, because access, there's a mistake that reporters make, that they think that you get access because you kiss up or because somebody likes you.
Yeah.
You get access because you force access, that people have to deal with you. If they like you and they don't have to deal with you, they're not going to deal with you if it's not to their advantage. But if you have the goods on them, then their choice is to either comment or not comment, and if they don't comment, you're good.
True. Yeah. If you do the legwork, you don't need to suck up to them, and even if they don't comment, and I know this from like people who have technically, supposedly written puff pieces of me that turned in the editorial process from a puff piece to not such a puff piece, and this is just like Cosmo and shit. It's not like any serious journalism or whatever, but a no comment in that instance is basically like an admission.
You're confirming everything.
Yeah,
so then they've got you. So
Yeah.
just you get them, and then I actually have just as much access, or probably more, than a lot of other reporters, because they know that I'm going to I've got what I've got, and I'm going to publish it.
Yeah.
And
you get them.
Yeah.
You get them all right. Okay, so that's pretty tight. Let's finish this, and then I'm gonna get into your book, because like I think there's a segue there as well as far as access and like how that's shifted in journalism to the Democratic Party, which we'll talk about in a second.
Some second thoughts about what.
Is this where? Yeah. So that. Yeah. So I think I was basically asking if you had any second thoughts about your life choices.
When do we do it? It'd be great to get you guys in a room.
And so here he's got my phone in his pocket. I think this actually goes on for a minute or two.
Yeah. Do you remember her name immediately?
I've interviewed thousands of people in the last 10 years. I work with them.
He says he's interviewed thousands of people. Why did Huffington Post not subtitle this part? Thousands of people over the last 10 years or so. I remember very few of their names.
Thousands of people in the last 10 years.
That's what you said?
Yeah. Because he immediately was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I never forget a face.
Is that how you... You look good? Pretty good? How you doing?
Take it back. See, he's asking me to take it back. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, he started saying he's going to
Like the confidence, the confidence this dipshit has is just honestly insane. Like how could you? I mean, at this point, it's like he didn't even have his own show, did he? At this point, or
No, he's just a producer at this point.
yeah, he doesn't even have his own show. All he's doing is like going to fucking Chinatown and like literally doing like Asian voice.
Yeah.
Asian voice to like harassing like old Chinese people, like, who are you gonna vote for, like that sort of shit. Like that. By the way, for those of you who think I'm joking, literally look up Jesse Waters Chinatown. Like he has done this. Like he is just total piece of shit. And even then, he thinks he's just like he's got the goods. He can just like fucking take your phone. I might throw it out the window.
And what I later learned is that he was in
What a bully.
He was in talks to get his own show at that time. And as a result of this, that got put off for like a year or so. So he eventually got his show, but at least this kept him off the air for like a year. I'm not off the air. He still was doing his pissant little ambush interviews. But.
Yeah. I mean, which is the OG, like, I mean, I guess it's like Project Veritas kind of, but more production value.
Yeah.
And also not as, somehow not as consequential, but also not as evil, I guess. Like, in some ways, Project Veritas is like still worse. Oh God, right-wingers are so awful. Anyway, all right.
Steal phones for a living.
Yeah.
I steal and fence phones for a living. I go in hipster coffee shops and steal them off the top.
Yeah, I like that you're not backing there like Grim. Back up off me? Uh-oh.
I don't endorse any of this. The crowd is forming. Now, what actually, the guy who eventually broke it up, Sean Spicer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, former Marine.
Oh,
This
damn.
is inaugural crowd, Sean Spicer.
Wait, I didn't even know Sean Spicer was a former Marine.
Yeah, he was.
What
or
the
something.
fuck?
He served.
He did?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the fucking pudding battalion, maybe. Holy shit. That man is no... Wait, is he in shape at all? Like, he looks super...
He's like kind of... Like,
he's like Jank.
solid.
He's like
Yeah,
Jank.
yeah.
Jank is like the most athletic fat person on the planet. For those of you who don't know, I mean...
Great on the basketball court.
Image of the scuffle from another angle? Whoa, that's awesome. Oh shit! Look at that. That's so good.
Unfortunately, there's actually no video of the actual.
I know. How the fuck in a room full of fucking media people, not a single person pulled their camera out?
I think this is Weigel's photo, Dave Weigel's photo.
Oh, nice. I heard the story and I was like, that's awesome. That's so awesome.
I don't like this photo because it looks like I'm getting hit, but that's deceptive.
I mean, I think you squared up right here.
Yeah, I am.
You squared the fuck up. You're guarding your face. That's pretty good. Like, that's good form, dude. That's really good form. And he's got height on you, and he's still like, I mean, he's pushing in. Is he a lefty?
I don't know.
He's pushing in. He's not using his right arm is completely super low, like exposing himself for totally vulnerable to an attack, to a counter punch, and he's not even using his legs. Jesse Waters strikes me as the type of person who has actually never had to punch someone, or has never actually been in a fight, and kind of used his size as an advantage to intimidate people and bully them.
Oh, there's Adam Green of PCCC. I think that's Ken Vogel, who ended up getting the phone back, actually.
Oh, nice.
Snatched it out of his hand.
So there is no audio of the scuffle?
It cuts off around the time. So you just hear some stuff.
Good. Where's the phone? Where's the phone?
Don't you think it's time for some repentance?
Is this the...
Oh, did HuffPost jump to...
yourself an anarchist?
I think they originally show, like, the annoying things that Jesse Waters does. Because, you know... classic liberal media bias, folks. But anyway. Okay, so that's pretty tight. That's like a cool little way to introduce you to some of the Zoomers that have probably never read The Intercept or whatever, because I have a lot of younger viewers. And you guys should. You guys should read The Intercept. They do great journalism.
And we don't do much. A couple pieces a day.
Yeah.
We're not going to overwhelm you.
What a selling point, Ryan. We don't even write too much. I mean, don't worry.
Just big pieces. Just dope singles.
So anyway, so let's talk about your book. So you wrote a book. It's called We've Got People. Okay, this is the free copy that I scored from
not for resale, but
the not for resale
you can buy this
copy.
one.
But you can buy it. You can purchase not this one because it says not for resale, but you can purchase it.
Actually, you can get it at the TYT shop.
Yeah,
Cenk doesn't help me, but Cenk would like that.
Yeah,
so
you can
do that.
You can get it from the TYT shop if you would like, or whichever way helps you the
Amazon,
most.
whatever else.
Amazon, okay.
From the publisher, doesn't matter. But get it and get 10 copies and give them all the way to your friends.
So I love that Bill O'Reilly said you were a far left zealot.
That was actually in the broadcast about the thing you just
Okay.
mentioned. He said he had no business talking to Jesse Waters.
Yeah, no, this is like Hitler saying you're a bad guy. You know, that's great. What an endorsement. What a fucking endorsement that is.
Got some Hannity on there.
Hannity, a total communist. I kind of like this guy, and I don't know why. It's like I'm punishing myself. He's gonna drive me to take Uncle Joe happy pills by the end of this. Sean Hannity, not yet fired Fox News host. You got some quotes from Naomi
Klein.
Klein.
The normal quotes.
Yeah, and then normal, cool people and not absolute psychopaths. So there's that. So the book is actually trailing from Jesse Jackson to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and talking mostly about something I talk about quite frequently here, the end of big money and the rise of a movement. Well, I guess it starts off with the beginning of big money, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of. Yeah. So take us through this. There's a couple characters that I want to definitely get into. Nancy Pelosi being one of them, and then Rahm Emanuel being another one, obviously, and maybe even some Reid. Just start us off. So what goes on in the Democratic Party? What's going on?
Yeah, and then the funnest guy really is Rahm Emanuel, and he and Pelosi kind of ride the same trajectory for a long time, but he's especially fun because he's such a volatile character, and he makes himself the story everywhere he goes, and he's also been in it since he was a child, so that helped for my narrative. So I ended up making him sort of like a main character. In 1980, he was like a junior or so in college, and he volunteers for a congressional campaign, which was AIPAC's first kind of major effort to knock out a member of Congress for being not sufficiently pro-Israel and actually way too close to Arafat. They hated this guy. And Rahm Emanuel volunteers for this campaign, and because he's a psychopath, he becomes the fundraiser. Like that's the thing that as a 20-year-old he wanted to do. And I talked to people who knew him then, and they were like, he was a phenomenon. It was just completely bizarre to watch. Like the one guy said he saw him meet the Commerce Secretary. I forget the guy's name at the time, but he called him Bubby. He's like, Rahm's like, Bubby, how you been? How's Dorothy? How's everybody? You know, big old slap on the back. And then just
he's like a
immediately
loud
into rapport. He's 20.
Yeah.
And just
for
like,
those of you who don't know, by the way, and I'm just gonna like try to point this to popular culture references so that people are more familiar with it. But Rahm Emanuel is the brother of Ari Emanuel,
Yes.
who is the head of WME, which I'm also represented by. So just putting that out there. But Ari is the Ari Gold character in Entourage. Like the Ari Gold character that was created, that larger than life, like crazy agent character from Entourage, is literally this person's brother. Rahm Emanuel, you might remember, is not running for re-election because he participated in the cover-up of Laquan McDonald's murder in the hands of the police force in Chicago, which was really bad. He's done a bunch of other things that were terrible and got widespread criticism, but this is the beginning of his political career.
Yeah, so basically imagine if that guy Ari Gold from Entourage got into Democratic Party politics.
Yeah.
Like that's Rahm Emanuel. And like Ari Gold, like it's so much bluster and all luck. Like if you watch Ari Gold's career in that show, not even talking about the real life one, you know, the successes that he has are pure luck, and the failures that he has are also pure luck. But he's just such a great marketer of himself that whenever like he makes a bunch of bad decisions that turn out well for him and his clients, he figures out a way that he can take credit for it, which is a perfect metaphor for what Rahm Emanuel has done throughout his entire career. He parlayed this terrible mayoral career into now he's an ABC analyst and writing for the Atlantic. And some Wall Street gig.
Yeah.
Some boutique financial firm.
Meanwhile, to my knowledge, I believe the guy, the journalist who uncovered the Laquan McDonald controversy is waiting tables. So there you have it, of course, the supposedly liberal mainstream media and the establishment media doing what it does best again, which is helping already successful fail sons fail upwards over and over and over again into cushy media gigs, while most journalists are out there literally waiting tables so they can make more money on the side and continue to do what they do.
Like, quite literally, there are two people available for this prized Atlantic journalistic position. One of them covered up a murder. The other uncovered the murder.
Yeah.
And the Atlantic hires the guy that covered it up.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking revelation. Okay, but let's get back to Rahm Emanuel. So you were.
And I'll run through this quick, but it's important because so many of the people who are in charge of the party now, like Rahm Emanuel, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, these guys, this was a formative moment for them, 1978 and 1980, when Ronald Reagan comes in and kind of wipes out the Democratic Party. And it feels like history to us. It was even history to me. I was a child, 2 years old at the time.
Yeah, I wasn't born,
so. But to them, it's yesterday. And so they spent this 12 years in the political wilderness with this actor, Ronald Reagan, annihilating them on a daily basis, and they internalized the idea that we live in a right-wing country, and that the only way for them to survive and hold on to any modicum of power is to be a little bit less right-wing than the Republican Party. And because they were outspent so badly in 1980 after these new Supreme Court rulings on campaign finance had come out, they said, well, the way that we need to compete with Republicans is not to reinvent what we are as a party and find a populist, progressive coalition that people like and a message that moves people to vote. What we need to do is we need to match them dollar for dollar. And for that, they went to the least offensive source of money they could find, which at the time was Wall Street. Because, think about it, back then, they don't want to go to the automakers because they represent the UAW.
Yeah.
They don't want to go to oil companies because they represent all the enviro groups. Like that's a big part of their coalition at the time. So they go to them, but they go to them discreetly. With abandon, they go to Wall Street because this is before the financial crisis, before the SNL crisis of the 80s. It was a very sleepy industry at the time. Like, what was that movie? It's a Wonderful Life. Like, like that. Those people were the bankers. Like, they're showing up at 9 o'clock, leaving at 3 o'clock.
Well, that's what I mean. This is the infancy stages. This is not like 90s Money Never Sleeps or like Alan Greenspan.
This is
a
little bit before like the movie Wall Street.
Yeah,
like, it's heading in that direction, and anybody could see it if they tried. But at the time, there wasn't any member of the Democratic coalition who was like aggressively seeing itself in opposition to capital, even labor. So that was the place to go.
There were no unions in Wall Street. So.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so there were unions, but who didn't like the banks ideologically, but they're like, we're not in open conflict. With them. We're in open conflict with our own bosses, not with them. And so if you're going to corporate America for your financing, that means that other idea that people had of a progressive populist messaging, you can't do that anymore, because that would require taking on the corporate forces that are funding you. So now you have to appeal to some segment of this white working class somehow, because there aren't enough at that time minority voters, period, to be a majority coalition. So how do you do it? You do it with just a little bit of racism. So you got a party with a lot of racism and a party with a little bit of racism, because you're only trying to get the 30% of the white working class that doesn't actively publicly participate in racist acts.
Yeah,
but they're cool with, like, they want to hear about it.
This is also in relation to the time, right? Because when we look back at the legislation that was being passed by the Democrats or being written by the Democrats, like crime control, for example, when we look back at them, we're like, oh, that was really racist.
Yeah.
And the way that they pushed that, comprehensive reform, also very racist. Hillary Clinton got a lot of flack for calling African American super predators young African American super predators, but like Joe Biden literally not only authored the thing, but he said much worse things. He
said these people are beyond
on the floor.
pale.
Yeah, he said on the floor. He said, I don't care about the socioeconomic factors that play
Don't
into
give
this.
me this crap.
They're gonna come in and bash my skull and my son's skull and rape my wife or whatever the fuck he was saying. It was nuts, right?
Yeah.
So, but at the time I guess that was considered a little less racist than the Republican Party.
Than Reagan doing his welfare mom stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Welfare queen. So it was just a little bit less. And so then in 1988, there's the first, and this is where I start from Jesse Jackson, the first kind of pushback, serious pushback against this effort comes from Jesse Jackson. And you would think that if it's Jesse Jackson, like this famous civil rights icon, the like right-hand man to Martin Luther King, you'd think that, well, he's probably running kind of a race-based, civil rights-driven presidential campaign, but no, he called it the Rainbow Coalition, and he said that all the working classes, white, black, and brown, need to unite against the economic violence. That was a phrase he used a lot. The economic violence being done by neoliberalism, by capital, in the form of Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party. And so all of a sudden he starts surging, and the idiots in the race start dropping out, Joe Biden being one of them. He dropped out
embarrassingly because he plagiarized a speech from a socialist in the UK from the Labour Party,
which like and it had like UK references in it.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm the first Biden in a thousand years to go to college. Oh no, his reaction was really funny. He's like, everybody plagiarizes, what? But whatever. Okay, so Joe Biden drops out.
Think about how hard it is to get busted for plagiarism in politics, which is all about plagiarism. That's how inept he was. He drops out.
It was like him and Melania Trump.
yes. He fades. Al Gore fades. A bunch of these clowns fade, and it comes down to there's basically just Dick Gebhardt, who's a kind of a hard hat guy, Michael Dukakis, who's like the neoliberal. They called themselves neoliberals at the time, before that became a slur. a neoliberal from Massachusetts, and,
which ironically at the
Jackson.
time is like literally the Conservative Party in the UK was also like the Thatcherites were neoliberals. So that should tell you something about, because a lot of people are unaware of how the Democratic Party kind of transformed itself from a party of the people, which is literally what you're talking about in your book, but a party of the people to technocrats, like faceless, lifeless technocrats that are only trying to implement marginal change as long as it just silences the populace. And even back then, they were still very much in line with the conservatives in the UK.
Yeah, and so Michael Dukakis was kind of the face of that technocratic movement. And so he and Gebhardt both very badly needed to win Michigan, this upcoming caucus, to prove that they could rally the hard hat folks there. And Jackson just crushes them. And so now you're 36 primaries and caucuses in. Gebhardt drops out, and it's Jackson and Dukakis in a delegate tie, and it's borderline apocalypse in Washington. Like going back and reading the articles from that time with the quotes from the Democratic establishment people, they were just in absolute complete meltdown over the possibility, the very real possibility now that Jesse Jackson was going to be the nominee of the Democratic Party. The next caucus or primary was in Wisconsin, and he was polling way ahead. And if he wins there, he can just roll to the convention, and the full weight of the party comes down on him in every possible way you can imagine. And the voters, a lot of Democratic primary voters start to think, oh, wait, he could actually win. I didn't quite realize that when I was saying I was going to support him. It's one thing for a white progressive back then to say that they support the black candidate. It's another thing when you tell them they might actually win. And so a bunch of those votes peel away, and he ends up losing Wisconsin and fading from there. Dukakis, the electable candidate, wins the nomination. Gets
So electable.
President Dukakis. We all remember his reign.
Yeah.
Happy as it was.
So this is actually a really interesting question that I want to ask you, because you cover, this is your bread and butter, and you're way more knowledgeable on this electoralism specifically than I ever could be, and most of our viewers are leftists, so some of them even scoff at electoralism, right. And this is something that I promote as much as I can, especially like Justice Democrats and all that. But what the fuck is wrong with the Democratic constituency that they are so obsessive over electability? Because I feel like this is not a common trend in the Republican side of things.
They wouldn't nominate Trump.
The Republicans are just like, whoever tells me what I want to hear, that's perfect.
Which is actually rational.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. But this is an ongoing conversation that I have with people who fancy themselves DC consultants when even the fanciest DC consultants don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And everyone thinks that they're an expert in electability. And that's how they operate, which is really weird. Do you have any idea why or how this happened? Is it media? Is it like the never-ending cycle? What is it?
I think it's a combination of a bunch of things, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because it is such a perplexing thing. I think on the most innocent level, it might be it's education level, and so the Democratic primary voters think they're smarter than everybody else because they tend to have a higher level of education, so they overthink things, and so they think, well, I don't like Joe Biden, but I think that these other people that I've heard of will like Joe Biden, so therefore I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. And their cloistered nature of their lives hampers their ability to suss out whether or not this other person is actually going to like Joe Biden. I know. I grew up in a rural area, and so I could tell you they're not going to like Joe Biden, just because he says a lot of gaffes.
He's an unserious. He's an unserious old man.
So people think, well, dumb people will like him.
Yeah.
And actually, no, dumb people won't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So that's the most innocent explanation. When it comes to the consultants, they have some real socioeconomic interests at play, either in terms of their own interests or the way that the milieu that they work in and live in just influences their thinking. And I've heard from people who have been in consulting meetings where they'll put out a poll numbers will come back. Let's say it's, what do you think of raising taxes on people who make more than $100,000 a year? And the numbers are through the roof.
Of course.
Of course they are.
Of course.
And the consultants are all like, I don't know about this. Boy, 100. And so they make more than 100 grand. But even if they're setting that aside, they're saying, well, my neighbor, he's not going to like this. And actually, I don't know anybody who would like taxes raised on people making more than $100,000.
If the only people you've surrounded yourself are people who make more than $100,000 a year, then that's naturally going to be your perspective, which is hilarious, of course. I think this has kind of created this like weird, consistent shift towards the right in American politics. But that is the constant fear that I have. I think it was Perrine who said, and I remember this quote all the fucking time, after the midterm elections, he said, turns out the most successful candidate in the Midwest and South is a faceless, lifeless, progressive piece of legislation or progressive bill not attached to any Democratic candidate whatsoever, because we saw this happen in Florida. We saw this all across the country where really progressive ideas were being passed while liberal candidates were losing.
Right.
So I don't know how to combat that. I feel like it goes beyond messaging, but maybe it showcases that there are, especially the electorate, there are people who are paying attention and are voting in their self-interest rather than just voting for whoever the Democrat is.
A key thing to do is to take decision-making power out of the hands of those consultants. And in some ways, I don't know if you guys followed this, but this recent DCCC decision might actually have some effect on that. So DCCC that's the campaign arm. It's their job, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. It's that committee's job to raise money and go out and win House elections all over the country. They recently implemented a new explicit policy that if a consultant works for a candidate who runs against a Democrat in a primary, that consultant can never get business from the Democratic Party ever again. Ridiculous, terrible, blah, blah, blah. What it will also do, though, is tell a lot of other consultants, so as long as I'm willing to not take money from the Democratic Party, if I can make my business elsewhere, then now there are all these other candidates that I can go work for. So if you can create a new infrastructure of consultants who are not bound to the old party orthodoxy and the old way of thinking, you could bring in some new thinking. And consultants aren't like bad by their nature of being consultants. Think about a campaign. It's limited by nature. Like, it's over on election day. And so the idea of a kind of permanent staff doesn't make sense, since it's a year-long, 18-month project to begin with.
Well, it does make sense if your permanent ideology is neoliberalism, and you're just basically carbon copying that exact same principle into every single fucking campaign that you work on. And I guess one of the best examples of this, of course, is what's the opposite of Richard Ojeda? The guy who, the immediate, I think it was Georgia District 6, John...
Oh, Ossoff?
Yeah, Ossoff. Ossoff is nearly identical to Buttigieg, nearly identical to Beto O'Rourke. I mean, conservative liberal from the South. I mean, the campaigns have gotten a little bit better since then, with their communication strategies. But that was like a perfect example of, no. As long as we run opposed to Trump, we can still get these, we can still get the wealthy whites to vote for us because they're really offended by Trump's rude behavior. And obviously that didn't work, but they're still consistently pushing that over and over again. Right.
And you can take it from one campaign to another. The DCCC does one polling memo and basically hands it out to everybody. Says these are your directions, your talking points for your district, no matter where you are. So yeah, it's a pretty hopeless enterprise. And if it were winning, it would have more of an argument for itself. It would say, okay, yeah, we make a lot of compromises, we don't make a lot of people's lives better, but we're better than Republicans, and we beat the Republicans. We keep them at bay.
I think it's a good place to go back to Rahm Emanuel, right?
Yeah.
And his track record. So can you
Yeah.
give us a little bit about?
Right. So he then ends up working for the Clinton administration, where he's even trying to moderate Clinton all the way through. At any time you come upon a controversial issue, you find Rahm being on the wrong side of it. He leaves at the very end. And spends about 2 years in the private sector, basically as a deal broker, using the connections that he made in the White House. He makes like $19 million in a very short period of time, and then he runs for Congress on a pro-war platform in Chicago. So he didn't have to. It's not like the district.
Yeah, everyone out of
like
Chicago is
war-hungry.
supposed to be like.
So, and then in his inaugural Atlantic column, he listed the Iraq War as one of the great, sins of the elites that they need to be held accountable for.
I remember that, yeah.
It's like, dude, you ran in. Never mind. So he becomes a member of Congress. He had worked at the DCCC.
Wait, maybe he thought it didn't go far enough.
You're
like
right. Yes.
like all of the
We shouldn't have left
W
yet.
era.
Yeah.
W era. Like you got to do full genocide if you want. You got to finish the job.
There's still people living there.
Yeah, so it didn't work. It failed.
Clearly a failure. And so he rises very fast. He's, he already knows lots of people in Washington from his time in the Clinton administration, his time at working at the DCCC. And Pelosi quickly, moves him up the ranks. By 2006, she makes him chairman of the DCCC. And so it's his job to go out and recruit candidates around the country. And this is where he's at his most masterful PR. He goes around, finds the most conservative dude. Right now, what the DCCC likes to do is try to find a veteran who's also a prosecutor, who used to be a Republican, who's a woman, preferably black or brown, and preferably gay. Like that's the DCCC's recruit now. That's progress. Like it used to be prosecutor and a veteran and a white guy who used to be Republican and is anti-gay and probably anti-choice. So like on some cultural issues, the DCCC has made some serious strides on some civil rights issues, but they still love that prosecutor.
Well, the thing that hasn't really
soldier.
changed is economic justice, though, right? Their focus on social justice has changed throughout time because they means test viciously, and they realize now that, ironically, the Rainbow Coalition, as long as it's still upholding the same corporate interests, is fine. And they know that representation works as well, so that's what they're hammering in. But when you say conservative, you mean fiscally conservative. So they're still looking for fiscal conservatives. They're not interested in economic justice
cut
at
taxes, cut Social Security. But there's been so much left-wing pressure on the Democrats that now they don't publicly say they want to cut Social Security, and even a lot of these more the DCCC recruits today will say they're for Medicare for all. Now you have to keep the pressure on them once they're elected, but they'll say it, which is actual progress. But so Rahm in 2006, he goes out and finds all these knuckle draggers, and the blogosphere at the time, I don't even know if anybody even knows what that is. It's like this, except without all the technology. It's just if Hasan's just typing into the internet and posting things.
Yeah, we don't even read anymore, so...
Right. These were words that were written. And so it was, a grassroots internet community that rallied behind progressive candidates in these districts, and in a significant number of them, the progressive beat Rahm Emanuel's recruit, and Rahm would then say publicly, okay, the left has screwed us. We have no chance of winning this district. We're walking away from it. The DCCC won't spend a dime. And some of the unions move on. Some of the other grassroots groups and the bloggers would raise money for these candidates anyway, and a significant number of them won. But that never ended up getting covered. So in 2006, Democrats win the House majority. Most of the people that Rahm thought were going to win, and he spent millions of dollars on, lost.
Yeah.
Significant numbers of the people that he said were going to lose actually won. What they call a targeting rate, you pick the 60 to 70 seats that you're going to go for that you think are on the map. His targeting rate was way off. In fact, when he first started, he said we can only win about 12 of these, and they need more than 30 to take over. So that at the time there wasn't enough of an alternative media to kind of get the counter message out. So the media that existed, the New York Times and Washington Post, went with the Rahm Emanuel story. That Rahm Emanuel's a genius. His strategy of recruiting these conservative guys worked, and that's why Democrats took over. In reality, he was just the wrong guy at the right time.
Quick question for you here. And this is something that's on my mind since I started reading. Do you think this is ideology? Like, do you think this is neoliberalism in its purest ideological form, or do you think it's just pure negligence? Is it the corrosive nature of moneyed interests? Like, what is it? Are these people aware of what they're doing, and they just like care about getting reelected, and they don't mind being the controlled opposition party, or do they genuinely believe that the American voters want someone who's more conservative, like that America is just a more conservative nation than us pinko commies and liberals living in California and think?
I think they partly believe it, and it's a belief that is fueled and propped up by the money that they get and their interactions with people, because they spend so much time in this world. Everybody that they talk to tells them that it's true. And so if everyone you hear from tells you something's true, you have to be a pretty strong person to be like, no, I don't think that's true. And you have to have a real faith in empiricism that a lot of these people don't, because they think that they are intuitively, great at what they do. They're geniuses, and so they have a feel for politics. They say, they'll tell you that politics is an art. Don't give me this shit about all these polls and this and that.
Well, that makes sense. That's why they're still trying to run the same kind of campaign that Hillary Clinton ran, and which was the same kind of campaign that Barack Obama ran, even though Barack Obama was much more progressive and much more charismatic, didn't have the same track record. And again, like we were talking about before, it's the same DCCC talking points that they hand out to every single district, when obviously different districts have drastically different politics, or even it's not ideologically consistent, which is why they don't push in California when they should be absolutely pushing the conversation as left as possible in reliably blue districts, but they don't do it.
But you also have to think about it this way, that it's rational in this sense, and it's not pleasant to think about, but imagine you're a centrist Democrat. If there's a three-way contest, there's the possible winners are left-wing Democrats, you, or Republicans. If the Republicans win, you're still in control of the Democratic Party, and things are actually probably going to get better for you in particular, because they're going to cut your taxes, and a lot of the rich friends that you have are going to be fine. You might not like the other things that they're going to do, and you don't like losing necessarily, but personally, you're going to be okay in your life. You're not going to be put up against a wall and shot. But you also maintain control of the party, which after 30 or 40 years of party politics, these people's lives revolve around their power within the party. It becomes their club, and it's hard to overstate how important it is to them to have their sweet suite at the Democratic National Convention, and like all of the perks that come with sitting on top of that rubble. If the left of the Democratic Party wins, you're probably going to get a tax hike.
I mean, you see what happened with AOC.
Right. Then you're no longer in control of the Democratic Party. You might intellectually, when you were a 20-year-old, have believed that those are the good things and that the world is going to benefit from these people. But by the time that you're in a position of power, you care more about
maintaining
the power, and you've convinced yourself by then that the left is not actually left; they're wrong, and that you're the actually the vessel, the best vessel for the hopes of the people. And so, in some ways, it's more rational for you to root for. If you have to lose, you'd rather lose to the Republicans than lose internally to the Democrats. There's this great quote from, I think he was a Republican, but doesn't matter. It was early 1900s. A machine politician in Philadelphia. Somebody said to him, "If you do X, you're going to destroy the party. This is terrible." And the guy said to him, "Yeah, but I'll rule over the ruins." And that's kind of like the attitude of a lot of these centrist Democrats, though they wouldn't necessarily say it.
Well, it's not like they're getting punished for losing.
Right.
Obviously, people
Right.
are still reliably voting for the Democrats. And then beyond that, we know that there are more Democratic voters in this country than there are Republicans. So it's madness to me that we keep losing regardless. And it's obviously bad politics that neither party can distinguish itself from one another from the perspective of voters. And people who are reliably voting Democrat or voting Democrat, despite the fact that they have a majority, they keep losing because of gerrymandering and a bunch of other factors. But I think most importantly, it is definitely like a lack of progressive economic policies that would separate us from the Republican Party, whereas the Republicans are just pushing the same things that the Democrats are pushing for anyway. And I think you talk about the Obama era tax cuts that were supposed to sunset after George W. Bush,
Yeah.
and what happened. And this goes back to like Rahm Emanuel under Obama, I guess. If you want to talk about that a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So then, so Obama wins in 2008. He names Rahm Emanuel as his chief of staff. Forrest Gump just keeps winding up in all of these spots.
Yeah.
And he uses his Ari Gold level of enthusiasm and energy to just smash every piece of the left that he can find. When people start to pressure blue dogs to just simply support the president's budget proposal, this new spending bill, he calls them nowadays unrepeatable names. And tells them, if you don't back off, we're gonna tell your donors. We know who your donors are, and we're gonna tell them to stop funding your little liberal organization here. We've got this. We're gonna negotiate with Republicans and the Blue Dogs. Just back off. He takes this like 20 million person volunteer army that he had, and they shutter it. They put it into the DNC and basically like put the thing on ice. And so as a result, you have a weakened Affordable Care Act. You have a stimulus that is much smaller than it needed to be, which means that when you're going into the November 2010 midterms, unemployment's still close to 10%. People are pissed off. And who are they pissed off at? The party in power. And so all of these idiots that Rahm had recruited, who had then voted against the Democratic agenda the whole time they're in office, they all lose for the Tea Party in 2010. So, like, what was the point to begin with? And so then on the tax cut fight, so Republicans, like, they care, like they're trying to get stuff done. So they come, like, Bush comes into office, doesn't win the popular vote. Supreme Court hands it to him. He has very little mandate, very little popular support. All the press says, oh, he's going to govern from the middle. Bullshit. Just like all the other Republicans, they don't. They govern from the right. And he goes immediately for this massive $3 trillion tax cut for the rich.
I'm not God.
In fact, the only decent part, you guys won't remember this, you're too young, but the only decent part of that tax cut were these $300 checks that everybody got who was old enough to be paying taxes at the time. That was an idea that Bernie Sanders had, and Bush stole it. And that's what's smart about Republicans.
There's a lot that's smart about Republicans.
They'll see a good idea from this, at the time, an independent socialist from Vermont in the House. They're like, Bernie, it's an interesting idea. He says just make the tax cut a $300 check that everybody gets in the mail, universally. No means test, nothing, just everybody gets $300. People loved it. Like, if you talk to people, like, go ask anybody over 40, and they'll remember getting that $300 check. So it was awesome.
They don't even need to do that.
I didn't get it. My girlfriend got it because I didn't have enough of an income to actually get the $300 yet. But my girlfriend got it, and I loved it. She got it. $300 for nothing. Just comes in the mail. It was awesome. Thank you, Bernie, and thank you, Bush. And so anyway, they used reconciliation, which is a process that allows you to only do majority vote in the Senate. You don't have to deal with a filibuster. You don't have to break the filibuster. And the cost of that is that your policy only lasts 10 years. So that means it's coming to an end in 2012. And Harry Reid, who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, is like, screw it. Let's let all these tax cuts expire. Let them go back up to where they were, and then make Republicans fight to cut them again. Then we're talking about tax cuts.
Yeah, but tax cuts on our terms,
Tax
which
cuts
would
on
be
our
tax
terms.
cuts for the middle class and
Right.
the poor, if there's any need
Tax
for
credits for the poor.
it. Yeah, tax credits for the poor, tax cuts for the middle class, and not for the wealthy. And then you would put Republicans in a really interesting position to have them literally defend tax cuts for the wealthy, which is, as we all know, is a terribly unpopular
Right.
idea. But so what happened, Ryan?
And so Reid is going through these negotiations with McConnell, and at the last minute, and I interviewed him for the book to talk to him again about this because I covered it in real time. At the last minute, they send in the master negotiator, Joe Biden. And McConnell knew what I think McConnell knew what Reid's plan was. He was going to go over the cliff because Reid is a baller by this time. He had started out as a kind of unimpressive dude. By this time, he's tough. And McConnell knows this. And so McConnell had already offered, okay, look, over 250,000, those taxes will go back up, but under 250, keep those taxes, and they're negotiating around the edges on some other stuff. So this is already a deal that McConnell's agreed to. Reid hasn't taken it yet because he doesn't plan to take it because he thinks he can get an even better one after he really sticks it to them. Joe Biden comes in. He's like, I got this. He's like, Mitch, how about we set it at 400? And Mitch is like,
But I don't. Here's what I don't understand.
Sure.
Okay, so this is a perfect moment for me to ask that same question again, which is this ideology? Is this on purpose because there is a vested interest in the donor base, like the major donors that are going to donate to Democrats all around the country? They care about this. Is it because of that reason that they were?
I think it's a little bit of both. That I think that for somebody like Biden, who by this point, even though he's lunch pail Joe, riding the train back and forth to Wilmington, his whole life is spent around rich people, and so that you hear 250,000, you're like, oh my God, how could somebody live?
No, that's the most pathetic part about Joe Biden is that technically his net worth is less than Bernie Sanders, who is a fucking leftist and was like an actual socialist for the longest part of his political career. And Joe Biden, who has been licking the boot of capital for his entire political career, has still not been able to generate as much revenue or as much money as fucking Bernie Sanders, who is a democratic socialist. What a pathetic loser. Oh my God. At least like as you said, Rahm Emanuel and all these other guys have made millions of dollars, like to the tunes of tens of millions, by wheeling and dealing. Joe Biden, on the other hand, pure bootlicker.
Just believes it.
Just loves the game. He's just in it for the game, dude. He loves it.
Yeah, and so he just goes in and gets a worse deal. But the question is, worse from whose perspective? From a lot of I think that some of them felt like 250 is just it's unfair to hit people that are making 250, and also when people say we're raising taxes on people who make more than $250,000, if you make $260,000 a year, you're only paying that extra new tax on $10,000.
Yeah.
So it's pennies on that thing, even if you want to work from the incorrect assumption that you can't live on $250,000 a year. It's only this tiny thing. It's like with AOC's thing with
top marginal tax rate,
marginal
$15 million.
Yeah,
Was it
10
15 or 10?
10 million, and 70% on 10 million.
70% on 10 million for income, which I looked into it and it was
like 10 people.
No, it's 15,000 people
15,000
technically.
people.
15,000 Americans make $10 million or more every year in income, and this would tax them at 70% once they hit $10 million.
And hundreds of them are athletes and entertainers.
Yeah.
Actually, who are only going to make that for like 5 years.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's like they're going to be poor by the time they're 50.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's awful, but it's the Democratic Party. So we talked about Joe Biden and how he totally butchered that deal. So where are we at now?
So, heading,
Not to summarize the entire book.
Yeah,
Here.
I
Like
know,
you guys
shit.
should go and read it.
You'll like it. You will. It's a fast read. And so this is an interesting moment where the Obama administration, people within it weren't even worried about Reid winning re-election or the Senate, Democrats keeping control of the Senate, because they were so annoyed by Reid having gone so far left and being a thorn in their side the entire time. And they're thinking, well, Republicans control the House. What do we need the Senate for anyway? It's not like one of these 78-year-old unhealthy Supreme Court justices is just going to keel over in the middle of the night. And so then, boom, down goes the Senate and down goes Antonin Scalia, and Obama can't name somebody to the Supreme Court because, again, Republicans play for keeps. There's an argument to be made that what Mitch McConnell did of saying I'm not going to even talk to this nominee had some electoral value because it attracts Republicans to the polls. But if you're going by polls, that was a deeply unpopular decision. But McConnell's like, I don't care. I want the Supreme Court. And their tax cut thing is a great other example of this. So they're facing a really tough midterm re-election in 2018. When Democrats are facing a tough re-election in 2018, they get a letter saying that Brett Kavanaugh tried to rape a woman. They sit on this letter because they don't want any controversy that might cost them a seat or two in the midterms. Republicans, on the other hand, they get the polling back that says this $6 trillion tax cut that you're trying to ram through without any hearings is insanely unpopular. And they're like, unpopular, huh? So you're telling me I can have $6 trillion and the price for that is Democrats control the House of Representatives, most likely. Like, yeah. They're like, we'll take the $6 trillion because they're in it. They're in it to win. Like they're in it for real, for keeps. They don't necessarily care about who the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee is if they can pocket $6 trillion of your dollars.
Yeah, well, and even beyond that, I mean, look, what is a better representation of exactly what you're talking about when Mitch McConnell literally said in the aftermath of this fucking financial crisis and Republicans think that they're never going to win another election ever, where like there's so much progressive momentum around Barack Obama, and Mitch McConnell just goes, fuck it, mask off, and says, no, we're just going to obstruct everything that they do. Like, that was insane to me as a young boy watching that. I was like, what the fuck?
Our number one priority will be to make him a one-term president.
What the fuck?
Like, how about getting the unemployment under 12%?
But that's the thing, like, that it worked.
It did.
It fucking worked.
I mean, he got a second term, but otherwise.
I know, but I mean, like, it worked as far as like mobilizing the Republican base to a certain degree, and it doesn't matter. Look at them, look at them now. It's mind-boggling to me that Obama, on top of all of that, still tried to compromise with them. We saw like the weakened ACA and what happened there. Where Republicans still didn't end up voting for the fucking thing, right, despite all of the compromise that we made. They then turned around, lied about the ACA, and then weaponized the deliberations process of the ACA to spear-dick their fucking tax bill, which was not even remotely similar to their deliberations process, where they were like, oh, well, they did this in the ACA, so we're going to do this for these $6 trillion tax cuts. Insanity. None of it matters. And the Democrats are just they consistently and very willingly give up power. And I think that the main difference here is not just the moneyed interest, as you mentioned in your book, but also that moneyed interest has essentially become the interest of the Democratic Party, where they can't push for progressive reforms. They can't push for like any sort of comprehensive, wide-sweeping progressive policies that will genuinely disrupt the established order, because their main donors benefit from a conservative, a conservative legislature.
Right, and that's why I combine the end of big money and the rise of a movement in the subtitle, because you have to have both. Like, in order to have a movement, a people-powered movement, you have to end big money. You don't have to end it completely, but you have to end your own reliance on it, because it is in direct conflict with your ability to create a populist message that's going to resonate, because the second you do, your money flees.
Yeah. And if you don't create a populist message for the left, for the Democratic Party, you obviously don't distinguish yourself far enough from the Republicans, and you're still going to get caught up in that same, I guess, boom bust cycle of 2 years. You're gonna have a Republican for 2 years, and then you're gonna have another like bullshit neoliberal Democrat for two terms, and that's going to repeat itself over and over again. And to break through that cycle of marginal change, you need someone like, I guess, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. And what I would recommend that Democrats start thinking about is just internalizing the idea that there's going to be these swings, that even if you come in and deliver the most effectively as you can on a populist progressive agenda, weird shit could happen. The Chinese could hack San Francisco and like take down the internet for 3 weeks, and like everybody's mad at you, and that comes right before the midterm election. You can still lose power, but while you do have power, put in place things that are popular and that make people's lives better, and they'll stay even once you're out of power. Which goes to the question of like, what's the point of politics? Like, is it to stay in power, or is it to make people's lives better? And like, the ACA had a lot of problems, but it made tens of millions of people's lives better. And as a direct result of that, they were unable to repeal it.
You had Republicans going to town halls of Republican candidates and saying, if you repeal this without a replacement, like I will never fucking vote for you ever again. I have cancer. My mother has cancer, and this has greatly improved our lives. Yeah, for sure. But they know that.
Right.
And the worst part is I think the Democrats know that as well. I think that I happen to believe that it's a little bit more sinister. I think that, like I mentioned already, if they were to implement any sort of actual progressive changes, they're not fearful of the mobilization of the Republican base. That's ridiculous. Right. I mean, the entirety of wedge issues was created so that the both bases could mobilize and polarize and fight off against one another. So obviously Republicans don't give a shit about like, oh, will this offend the Democrats? But I think that what they're actually what the Democrats are actually scared of offending is moneyed interest. Yeah. And that's why they can't. That's why they can't actually push for comprehensive, like actual legislative change.
Yeah. And so folks know that like the book's not all history too. There's like the last section of it, the last half of it really gets into the last couple years, and I get into how that Ocasio-Cortez's win, came out of a series of decisions made by people and movements over the last several years, really going back to Howard Dean, but driven to the top by Bernie Sanders. That a lot of folks don't know this, but like a ton of the people who were doing the organizing for Sanders, they're the ones that went out and created Justice Democrats. And then when Justice Democrats' effort to elect like a couple hundred Democrats was clearly failing, they had a moment of truth, and they said, what are we going to do? And they said, well, let's just turn all our guns on New York 14, Joe Crowley, Ocasio-Cortez. And they were based in Tennessee. They all moved to New York and just started, and they just went all in. It was like just all the chips were pushed in. And their argument was, if we can elect one kind of game-changing catalyst and get her to Congress, then we still have a shot. And it's worked like nothing I've seen, at least in the sense
we got more than one. I mean, we got Ilhan Omar as well, Rashida Tlaib. Like there have been plenty of there's been plenty of momentum behind the progressive branch of the Democratic Party. But as you mentioned before with the DCCC move, like there are plenty of efforts to squash it.
They're not welcomed with open arms, that's for sure.
And as I've heard you speak about this, like Nancy Pelosi's pretty vicious. Yeah. Like most people don't know this, especially if they only see like the timid Nancy Pelosi in media. But from what I understand, from what I've heard you speak of, Nancy Pelosi behind closed doors is absolutely vicious, and that makes sense. Otherwise, she wouldn't be in a position of power if she didn't have like the proper whipping capabilities. Right.
She brings the brass knuckles,
and you only see that against the more progressive part of the party when she said something to the tune of like, a glass of water could get reelected in the Crowley district, or when they're talking about
the Green Dream.
Yeah. Like it's so frustrating to me that it's the most. We have this gift given to the Democratic Party by Bernie Sanders, and then all of the progressive grassroots momentum that came after that to finally win. Because imagine if we weren't pushing for Medicare for all right now. If all of the candidates, and that would not have happened without Bernie Sanders. I mean, I know that it's been tried before, but it 100% would not be where it was if it wasn't for the Our Revolution messaging put behind it and the messaging from all the activist groups that are working alongside it, right? So what would it be? What would the Democrats be talking about right now if they didn't have Medicare for all?
That's their thing. They just want to say we're for lower drug prices.
Yeah.
Because it polls well.
Because
of course it polls well.
Which is Donald Trump said that too.
Right. Everybody's for lower drug prices.
Yeah.
Except the drug makers, but even they pretend they're for it.
Yeah, no, I know. And well, their workaround to that will probably be, well, open it up to competition and let generic manufacturers come in, and then they buy out the generic manufacturers, so they still keep making all the money off of it. But yeah, no, it's just it would be boring. All of the ideas that they're pushing right now, all the ideas that progressives are pushing right now is Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage.
Rahm Emanuel in 2006, he had his 6 for 6. God, it was the most boring shit. It was like
I'm not God.
It was like
Black flag.
raise the minimum
Rose.
wage, which raise the minimum wage,
Okay.
but to what? Just raise it.
Oh,
Just raise it.
okay.
Some type of like corruption reform. Probably something about stem cells, like. I don't know if
that was a big deal. That was a big deal under George W. Bush. I remember because they were like anti-science because they were worried that we were killing babies.
Hurt some babies.
Yeah. Which, by the way, unironically, Republicans still believe this shit because their messaging is more effective.
Now they say they're not killing like fetuses in the lab. Now they're saying they're like killing actual babies in hospitals.
Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump literally came out, I think it was in Indiana, and said, they wrap the baby up nicely after the baby is born, and the doctor and the mother talk to one another on how to best execute this child.
It's not funny, but I'm laughing, but it's like...
No, it is. It's fucking dark, but it is kind of funny. But I mean, it's nuts.
Like, and there are people who listen to him and were like, "That's awful that they're killing babies."
Yeah, infanticide. There are so. I mean, I wonder what that polls at. I wonder how many Republicans actually believe that right now.
Right, and what do you have to think about your opposition to believe that they're pro killing babies?
Yeah, I think you say hell yeah, we're fucking we're anti-natalists, baby. That's my method. But I lean into it. But then again, I'm not running for office, and I never will be. But yeah, wait. When do you have to run? It's 3:30.
We should go pretty soon.
Okay. All right. Well, if you want to wrap it up, is there anything else that you want to talk about before?
See if we got anything
do you
fun
guys have
in
any
here.
questions? Ryan's head shake and sigh. Fox Noise told me so. Trump 2020. Malthus heart. Malthus. If I was pro. All right, guys. Oh, are you a dry jacker or a wet jacker? We're not gonna ask Ryan that. I'm gonna stop doing that seriously. If you guys are gonna fucking ask every guest I have on.
Why do you think 40% of cops engage in domestic violence? Is it that we ran when I was at the Huffington Post, we did an investigation where we FOIA'd police departments all over the country for confirmed cases of the domestic violence or abuse, like not which to get an affirmed case, it meant it went all the way through the system against all of the obstacles set up to find the cops innocent, and they still got found guilty and found like just a startling number of it.
Really?
I think cops get paid terribly. I think that's part of it. You're walking around with a gun all day, which is jacking up your testosterone. And I think the combination of those two things is going to give you abnormally high rates of domestic violence, because rates of domestic violence are high anyway.
Yeah. Well,
So-
it's extraordinarily high in police officers from what we know.
Yeah.
It's like 4
Right.
times, I think, right?
Yeah.
The national average. But that's the latest, like the most comprehensive and the latest study that was conducted in this is like back in 1990s. And then they nipped that shit in the bud real quick. They were like, nope, no more studies on this issue. And they don't even prosecute, or they're not going to prosecute their own anyway, or investigate their own anyway, as they have shown time and time again. So there's
Right.
almost like no way of finding what the true number is. What does he think about what you're doing, spreading progressive ideas on Twitch? I mean, that's kind of a boring question.
Yeah,
what
but
do you-
I love it. I love it. Before, who bought Twitch several years ago?
Jeff Bezos. It's
And
Amazon.
didn't someone buy it before that?
I'm not.
or was it-
I'm not sure.
and-
But it used to be Justin TV, and then I think Amazon bought it.
I was following it pretty early on. I didn't quite know how to use it. I'm not, because I only got a Switch right after Ocasio-Cortez won. Actually, it was like I was in the Bronx, and before I hadn't played video games for 20 years before that. I was in the Bronx covering the race. I've been covering it the whole time.
They're calling you a boomer.
I am a boomer. And she wins. I get off the train near my house. I go into Best Buy and bought a Switch. Like that was my boomer. Like,
Yeah, no,
way
that's
of
what
ce-
everyone
way,
says.
Way of celebrating.
That's what people that don't play video games say. Well, you don't
Yeah.
have to. Obviously, you don't have to play video games anymore. I mean, look, the entire time we were talking, there was like 1,300 people listening to this conversation.
But I was really into it, and I tried to get HuffPost to start partnering with it. I was like, this is where this shit is going. This is where the kids are, and I couldn't quite make it work. I was trying to get us to co-sponsor a couple of esports tournaments.
Esports is huge now.
And we got close, but it's just Huffington Post was like declining and like falling apart as we were trying to like put stuff like this together. We never pulled it off. I think it's great that that you and your folks are colonizing this type of environment. This is where the battle's being fought, because you fight it here and it radiates out in an exponential way.
And the opposite has happened on YouTube, where like the alt-right and far-right has completely taken over messaging on that platform. And we know how effective it is, especially if you follow like stochastic terrorism instances all around the world, and where they openly admit, where the shooters will openly admit in their manifestos where they have gotten radicalized, and it's always YouTube. So I saw that a while ago. I saw how reactionary a lot of apolitical gamers were becoming because of Gamergate and a variety of other reasons, and money literally being funneled through back channels into conservative commentators, and how it changed that marketplace of ideas so dramatically. And that's why I came on the Twitch, because I wanted a place where I had a consistent audience that I could talk to and radically change the reactionary politics of gaming, one person at a time if I can, by like going on and talking to these people and debating them. And there are some people who are doing that, like Destiny is doing a good job with it too. He was mentioned in the New York Times article from Kevin. So yeah, where there's a couple of us out there, and I think Twitch is more progressive than YouTube across the board, I would say, because Twitch has like very strict terms of service too, unlike YouTube. I want to ask you one last question before you go. What do you think about Bernie's chances? I'm not very optimistic. I'm not going to lie. I was very optimistic earlier on. I think the latest poll results are saying that Biden has only lost 1 point, and he's like he's still at 34%. Bernie is at like 19 or 17, and he's remained constant. Warren is gaining, and Buttigieg is gaining as well. I don't know why, but
I think Buttigieg is going to gain if Biden fades, because he'll be the establishment's like next horse.
They dropped Kamala Harris real quick.
They dropped her so fast.
Yeah, that was kind of sad.
They gave her like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they're like, new horse, please.
Maybe it's because of the reparations, though. I don't know. I have no idea.
I'm a little more. I mean, optimistic is tough but I think that there's a path. Like, I think it's possible. If it's true that he has, like this campaign says, 20 to 25,000 volunteers in the Iowa caucuses. If you're volunteering, that means you should be caucusing.
Yeah.
And 25,000 votes in the Iowa caucuses we could look up the numbers. Like, that could win you the caucus just alone.
I was just gonna say, and you talked about this with Jesse Jackson, right? Like how, and we briefly talked about it as well, like how quickly that electability mentality within the primaries can change the entire Democratic voter base's opinion on someone.
Yeah.
If they go from, oh shit, this socialist dude is actually crushing now. Maybe people don't care about socialism. Well, wait a minute. Like, I kind of like all the policies that he's talking about anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll vote for Bernie Sanders.
That's the alchemy that has to happen, and it happened with Obama.
With Obama,
and particularly with the black vote. Obama going into Iowa had like 3% of the black vote.
Yeah.
Because to a person, when they'd be focus grouped or polled, he can't win. I like him, but he can't win. This is America.
Yeah.
Been living in America my whole life. I'm telling you, he can't win. And so, boom, he wins in like the whitest state you've ever heard of. And overnight, it shifts. And they're like, oh, well, I like what he stands for.
But the difference
and
there,
he can win.
but he had representation in one of the most active voting blocks within the Democratic Party, and representation, whether we as leftists like to believe it or not, absolutely matters, right?
AOC will tell you it matters.
Yeah, AOC will tell you it matters. I think Beto O'Rourke literally lost because he did not have the representation. Like, it doesn't matter if you call yourself Beto or not, you're still fucking white, dude. Like, it's not gonna work in Texas. And I think, I think Bernie unfortunately doesn't have that. Like, because there is no, because of McCarthyism and Red Scare and like how even at the institutional level we've eradicated all matter of like leftist conversations from the political arena. That it's there is no constituency for leftists or socialists. There is none of that.
Right.
Maybe on the internet, like the blogosphere, as you mentioned in your book as well. Through like the progressive activism, sure, but is that going to be enough? I don't know. The main difference here is Bernie Sanders does not have the representation as an old white guy, and even Jewish too, which is, I'm sure there's like a lot of anti-Semitism out there as well.
But yeah, if he wins Iowa and then he should win New Hampshire, now he's a winner. To your that's the best hope.
I think the southern states with black votes going to be devastatingly hard.
Yeah. But we'll see. Like if he can get young people out, and then California's early, Texas early. He does extremely well with Hispanic voters. It's his best voting bloc, and actually that's because they tend to be younger. So it's not actually demographics; it's more age. But yeah, that's the needle. That's the needle he has to thread, is just proving that he's a winner.
Yeah, two victories, proving that he's a winner in this like very polluted primary race.
And then Warren and AOC get behind him, and you kind of roll. Like that's things happen so fast. Like and I used a quote from Lenin in there where I'll mangle it, but he said like there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. Yeah. And so like there'll be a couple weeks. And that happened in '88, but there'll be a couple weeks in early 2020 where decades could happen, or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. For guys, we've got people. Is it on Audible? People are asking.
It will be soon. So if you go to the strongarm.com, strongarmpress.com, and click on the book, you can sign up to get the Audible when it's ready. It's like done, but it's running through the system. And I get it. Like it's much easier to listen to a book nowadays.
People don't read anymore. I mean, definitely my stupid ass audience. Those pay pigs. None of them fucking read. They just want to sit here and watch me talk and then talk shit.
You could read it to them.
Yeah, maybe. That's true. I could do that. We can just go through it piece by piece.
All right. 24 hours.
Yeah.
Get the meth.
It's not that. It's a short read, guys. Don't worry. Well, I'll be right back, guys. But that was Ryan Grimm. Oh wait, what's your?
Oh yeah.
You want to give him? Wait, and also give him your Twitter and whatnot, or wherever they can find you.
Catch me on Twitter, which is at Ryan Grimm. The best thing to do, besides buying 10 copies of the book, is find my newsletter, which is Bad News. I call it Bad News. Badnews.substack.com.
Oh, it's on Substack.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and that it comes out maybe once a week, twice a week. It's very sporadic, but it's only good things, and it's free.
Okay, hell yeah, there you go. All right, well, that was Ryan Grimm. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Moderators, if you could blast his socials, that would be great. And I'll be right back.